Welcome to the All of You podcast, where we believe healthy relationships are created by growing individually and pursuing a healthy relationship with yourself.
So let's take a deep breath. Settle in and grow together.
We matched today. We're in brown sweaters.
You match me.
I matched you.
Yeah.
I tend to match you when I can.
Did you do it on purpose?
I do match you on purpose all the time. You haven't picked up on this?
I know that you do it. I just sometimes wonder, because I don't always ask, I don't know what percentage of the time it's on purpose or not. Because there is that thing, I don't know if it's a thing, but people talk about how couples start dressing like each other. So part of me is is it a subconscious accident or is it a conscious that you want to match me?
I think it's funny. I do it as a joke. I've done it since we met. You know this.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah, it's a common joke between us.
You bought us matching shoes immediately. Well, no, you bought me shoes to match you.
Chucks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You had bigger platform ones than I bought, but you did mention that you wanted them.
I did, yeah.
But I think it's funny when we match because I think a lot of couples get annoyed when they try so hard not to match, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When they leave the house, we're going to match. We can't match. And I just go, I don't know. It's just a funny joke. It doesn't matter to me what we're wearing and if we match. It shouldn't matter, if we match or not.
Yeah.
You can wear whatever you want and I wear whatever I want. But it's just a funny thing.
Yeah. I do sometimes when we're getting ready. I don't try to match you out in the world as much, but I do think about when you get dressed for the podcast before me, I'll try to find something that's not going to clash aesthetically in the video. So I will, but I don't go I'm going to match Dave today. But I will be oh, okay, these colors don't totally look bad.
If we're
That's
going to
more
go
of a
to
recent thing, actually. I would say the earlier podcasts, we were in some funky outfits.
The early ones were weird. They were weird. They were fine, but we were struggling a little bit, I think, with the identity crisis, really, of it. Starting a podcast about personal growth or just your own vulnerable subjects is a death to your identity as you know it.
Do you think it's a death to your identity or a death to your ego?
Both. But I think that it just is, I don't know, that's kind of my take on the ego is it is part of your identity, you're putting your identity in to different things, but we'll get into it. But yeah, I think matching is funny. And I think that definitely if we're going to go to Chili's for a date night.
Can we talk about that for a second? We used to eat at really
nice places.
Nice, trendy.
When we both had regular jobs.
Yeah, and now?
We were both in the corporate world, for those people that don't know. We both worked in the corporate world. And
when we met, we were both making over 6 figures.
Yeah.
And so we would go to nice dinners and stuff. And now our spicy date night is Chili's.
Yeah, we're poor, but we're so rich in time.
I've never felt richer, actually.
Yeah, it's a big trade-off to choose to do something different for your career where you have better ownership of your time, but you don't have any money. It's a weird thing to feel oh shoot, money is super valuable, but I've always traded so much time for it and I've never had time to do the things that I want to do. And so now we get that time. We have to work, but we get to take meetings with people and we get to do different things for work. So it's been a better, it's just a weird thing to feel both the juxtaposition of it all,
Yeah. And to really go a step deeper in that, I just want to say that Chili's chips and salsa slap.
The best.
Fantastic. Whatever they're
Yeah.
doing to those chips, the
The chips
crispiness.
are
I don't
made
even miss fine dining at the trendy restaurants because Chili's chips and salsa,
is that good?
that good. Also, not sponsored.
Yeah.
Probably should be, but not a sponsored ad.
They make the chips with air, I'm convinced. Like the chips just they're so airy.
Yeah, they are
They're
airy.
very like weigh nothing and they just break apart in your mouth like air. It's and the salsa is great. They tell me this. Somebody, if you haven't been to Chili's in a long time, go to Chili's and tell me they don't get you your drinks and your chips and salsa. Order your drinks. We tend to get a soda. It's our treat when we go to Chili's.
I feel like we're admitting that we're like 95 years old right
Yeah,
now.
like our Chili's order is might be a coping mechanism, but but it's
Also, pro tip. If you sign up to be a Chili's rewards member, your chips and salsa are free.
yeah. We'll get off the Chili's thing, but tell me you don't get your chips and salsa faster than any restaurant ever and your drinks. It'll be there sometimes before the waiter has even left the table. Like the drinks are in, the chips and salsa are in, the waiter's like taking your entree order and the chips and salsa and the drinks come. Boom. It's so fast.
It is. You know what the only downside I will say about Chili's though is other than the chips and salsa and fajitas, everything else is kind of gross.
Well, now we're not going to get sponsored.
Uh,
Everything's great. But try the fajitas.
I don't know if Chili's
I won't condone
sponsorship is in alignment with us.
I won't condone anything
but-
else other than the chips and salsa. All right.
Well,
Speaking of how much has changed in our life, this is pertinent to what we kind of wanted to talk about today because I feel like that's around the time that we started to change so much in our relationship. And we did an episode on change when like maybe episode 3. We're on episode
which
like
is probably
33
recorded
or
about a
something.
year ago.
Yeah, this is probably like episode 33 or 34. We have a few we haven't put out, but we probably 2 years ago, we started to change like we started to change when we met, but we started to change even more like 2 years ago where it like we started the work when we met, I think, and then it started to change us by like 2 years ago.
Yeah, which it takes 3 years to rewire your brain.
Yeah.
So as you're making like micro changes, it kind of actually makes sense that I think we're right around the 3-year mark
From when I first started to go hard on self-development. I mean, I think we were both like average self-helpers. Like I had quite a few books. I know you had a lot of books. Like I listened to a lot of podcasts. Like I've always been a big fan of self-development, but 3 years ago, when your relationship is on the line, it kind of lights a fire under your butt and you end up changing a lot more drastically.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I've always been into self-help, but it didn't actually start helping. Like all the books that I read, it didn't start helping until I really got more self-aware because I couldn't until I learned how to become more self-aware and started growing in awareness. I didn't know really what I needed to change.
Yeah.
Like I could understand like, okay, I this is where I'm at. I want to be here. I know I need to make moves to get there, but like, what are those moves? And I think that self-aware, like learning how to become more self-aware is what allowed the books to start clicking. Whereas I think a lot of what I read prior to learning how to become self-aware didn't move the needle as much.
what do you think the key difference was, like in your self-awareness?
I think it was like learning to drop my defensiveness of myself and learning I was safe to explore myself, learning and telling myself I was safe to see myself. I know that sounds really funky, but I think my ego kept me safe by denying my flaws and my reality. Like, I would be like, no, I'm not that way. Like, oh, that's not true about me, because that felt safer than actually accepting my flaws and learning how to tell myself it's safe to see myself. It's okay to be flawed. I think I had to give myself a lot of permission. It's okay to be flawed. It's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes. And it's okay to see myself. And it wasn't like saying that one time and then it like clicked. It would be in all sorts of scenarios where I would say that. I think that came about a lot if like we were fighting and I really clung hard. My ego would cling to like, it's your fault, not mine. And I was very defensive about that. And I cared way more about being right than us not being in a fight. And I think learning that that never solved anything, like I couldn't repair a fight with that mindset. So I had to learn how to shift that to go, okay, I actually would like, I had this little card written down that said, like, maybe Dave has something to say and he needs to be heard, and maybe I'm not right. And I would actually like try to in our fights, I would try to tell myself, like, maybe I'm not right. And it was like an inner war with my ego though, because I'd be like, no, I am right. And then I'd be like, maybe you're not right. And I'd be like, no, I'm right. Like I'd have this war going on. But when I'd eventually allow myself to go, okay, like you're not right about everything, try to see his perspective. And then our fights dissipated so much faster. Um, and I'd be able to like see where my defensiveness was getting in the way of our connection, or seeing where my like sometimes things we would fight about would be like ways I would attach my identity to something and like be like, this is a part of me, and you'd be like, why are you trying to say that's a part of you? Like, I don't know, weird identity attachments that I would try to cling on to. I think actually, this is a really random tangent, but I think a lot of our fights in the beginning were us both having attachments to things, and then us not like seeing that in the other person and being like, oh, that's so gross. You're attached to like this identity. You're that type of a person. Like, why? And I'd be like, it's who I am. Don't take this from me.
Yeah, it's
So
such an interesting subject because I think like, I mean, we talk about this all the time because we struggle sometimes with the balance. I think one of our struggles in our relationship, tell me if you think I'm wrong, is we struggle with the balance of pushing each other to grow because we do want to do that. Like that's a big value of our relationship is personal growth and continued growth because we just see the benefit from it in life. Maturing, really, emotional maturity, capacity to hold space for the girls and for each other. Like we're always pushing each other to grow, but then also accepting where the other person's at. And it's this constant balance. And I think every relationship has a different balance of that. And some people just want to be accepted and they don't want to be pushed to grow at all. And then you have, if you're paired with a partner that wants to grow, and wants to, continue to push to grow, that creates a lot of tension. And I think like we've I think one of our earliest difficulties was that tension. And then we kind of rolled into agreeance on, we weren't even self-aware enough to know that was the tension. So we were battling with each other's egos and having these ego battles where now it's like, okay, that's just where you're at. I'm going to accept that. But then I also might say like, do you want support in growing that? Do you want support and you might go, no, I like this right now and I'm safe and I don't want to grow in this area right this moment. I'm dealing with this other thing, and that's okay too. Like it's just this blend and balance of I love you and I accept you and I want you as you are, but I also love you so much that I want to help and support your growth if you're on that trajectory. If you also desire that. It's a hard balance to get into gear, I think, in with couples.
I'd also say in the beginning, if I think especially in the beginning, but even still now, I'm a little bit more like resistant to change. And that drove you nuts. So if you'd be like, do you want help and like support growing with that? And I'd say no, that like killed you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of our growth. It's been part of my growth to accept the areas that you don't want to work on yet or aren't ready. Like sometimes you're just not ready.
Well, sometimes I'm not ready. And then sometimes I think what I would say to you is, do you want me to deprioritize this thing so I can work on this thing? Like it would literally be like, we were having a business meeting and I'd be like, what's the KPI, Dave?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me working on? Is
Yeah.
this the thing? And then it would be like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, you can table working on that because, fixing this is more important.
Yeah, because and it's so tricky because as we get into relationships, people do, it's like you don't always know the other person's ego entirely. It takes a while to learn, and then people, I mean, I'm still discovering things about you all the time. So, you just have to proceed with caution. and like and check in, it's
Yeah.
just it's always a process of checking in, but the growth has been great. I wanted to ask you like what, because today we wanted to talk about change and how much we've changed. Like I think we did that episode on change, and I don't even, probably should have listened to it first so we don't just repeat the episode, but I think a lot has changed since then. And so more so in the last like 9 months of doing this podcast. 9 months now? Yeah, about.
I mean, 9 months, I
Well,
think,
since we
since
launched, but
launch,
a year almost since
yeah.
recording. What specifically in regards to this podcast, what has the podcast changed for you?
I mean, when we first started recording, it would take me about 10 minutes to actually sit down at the mic. And we had this whole ritual we would do where we'd put on Zach Bryan, slow dance. And then sometimes I would like freak out dance and shake out all of the fears. And then sometimes I'd get on the mic and be like, I can't do this. And I'd be like, let's only talk about you this episode. Or a topic that I could absolutely speak to, and I'd be like, I don't know anything about this, so we're not discussing this. And it'd be something that I love talking about. Sitting down at the microphone, you could see it in the videos. From the beginning, I was so uncomfortable. It was like my body was like, if you look at your body as like a container, right? The amount of discomfort in me and fear and anxiety was oozing out of me to where there were many times I wanted to quit. And now I'm like, oh, we're recording this week. Like, let's go. I'm excited. Yeah, we say a quick prayer before we hop on the mic, but I don't need a whole Zach Bryan dance routine. Those are some of the changes. And then comfort in what I will share has expanded.
Yeah. So what internally has changed for you?
So, in order to share more, I had to kill more of my ego in caring what people thought of what I'm sharing. So, a lot of the topics I've given more of my opinion, more of my story, and gone like some people are going to hate this, some people are going to love this. I'm okay with that. And that was a really that's a I'm actually, I would say, not where I want to be as far as not caring what people think. I still have work there, but I'm so much farther down the road. And I think it's like it was a matter of doing it, surviving it, realizing I could do it, doing a little bit more. And it was almost like exposure therapy in a way where I just had to keep at it and realize I could sit with the discomfort of it, realize we have had friends reach out upset about it, things we've said on the podcast, telling us they don't like the podcast. We've had hateful comments. We've had a lot of negativity.
Not a
And
lot, but a fair share for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I wouldn't say a lot, but we've had it.
Yeah.
And learning, I think that has been powerful for growth. Learning that you can have people disagree with you, not really like what you're putting out there, and still be okay and still believe in what you're doing. That has been a huge change for me.
Yeah. How have you been able to work through that over the course of the last 9 months or a year?
I think a lot of it goes back to sitting with all the discomfort that comes up from when someone did um, say something unkind about the podcast or about something I said, sitting with it and speaking, like sitting in the discomfort and then speaking my truth to myself. So, what that actually looks like is going, like, I feel in my body, I felt insecure. I felt like the people pleaser in me was like, ah, like dying. Like, I was, oh my gosh, like, I would have these doubts of if I did the right thing, am I on the right path? And then, like, it was just, I could only describe it as like extreme discomfort. And then I would say to myself, their opinions of me don't say anything about me. Their opinions of me don't say anything about me. Their opinions of me don't say anything. I would just over and over and over while still feeling the discomfort, but I was like detaching from them.
Yeah, and why do you think that was a good thing for you? Because I think a lot of people might be scared to do that. Like I think we all are. It's so scary. They say like what's that old adage like there's a couple but like you can't be a hero in your hometown. So like they see you as a certain version and then they have a hard time accepting this new version of you. So like it's scary, it's hard and it feels so uncomfortable. It almost feels sometimes wrong or like you shouldn't do that thing. It can very much prohibit you from taking the risk or doing the thing because it feels wrong to change on everyone. It feels wrong to change everyone's perception of you and to like something that just doesn't feel right depending on your environment, I think that you're in and with the people around you, but it can feel mean almost and hurtful to like start speaking out about things or being more vocal. And then there's that other quote that's like, BC just posted recently and he said, he who can't offend people can't be honest. I bring that up because, like, what about what gave you, like, how did you give yourself the permission to change? And how did you work through those fears? And why did you think that it was a good thing to change?
Such a great question. Did I change or did I just step into who I am around all people?
Sorry, being more authentic.
Yeah. So, like, did I change or did I just or did I just speak the truth that's always been inside me? Like, yes, I have made changes. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of growth, there's been a lot of changes. But I think one of them is that the authentic me that's always been there, is now coming out of me where I used to hide her to fit in with whoever I was with. I mean, I could be a chameleon so easily. I mean, at one point I could fit in when I was in at a manufacturing career for 10 years working in 3D printing and manufacturing, sitting at tables with middle-aged men, and I could chameleon in and I could find a way to hold a conversation and fit into that role. I could be at a festival fitting in with a group of drugged up hippies. I could, travel and meet someone from another country and fit in conversation with them. Like, and I think,
Did you like that about yourself?
yeah. And I still like that about myself, but the change is not censoring who I am when I'm in those groups
Just to fit in.
just to fit in.
So you feel like the person that you've been becoming lately is more your authentic self.
100%.
What, and this is where I want to get, like, what gives you the confidence in that? Because I think that's where it's scary. When you, for me, and for anyone that's done a lot of change in their life, sometimes it can feel like, am I actually being inauthentic to
Well,
change?
yeah,
Like, it can feel inauthentic, even though you're just playing with that. Like, is this me or was that me? I lost myself. Who
yeah,
is the real me? And is the person I'm becoming actually me, or am I actually becoming more of a fraud now? And that's just so. I mean, I'm dealing with that all the time with this podcast and even being on a camera and a microphone. Like, am I supposed to be? Is this me? Is that the guy that I know? Because it doesn't look like the guy that I know. I the guy that I know was afraid of a camera and didn't even like getting his photos taken. So who's this guy? Sometimes it feels like that. And I
well,
just,
it's the same guy. It's just the guy, it's the version who's not afraid of playing small anymore.
yeah, but what, so I want to ask you, because I'm actually like curious, what about your new version gives you confidence that it's the more authentic part of you, that you're stepping into the more authentic version of you? Like, how do you have confidence in that?
It's a really hard one to answer because I think there are times I've changed so much that I go, where'd you go? Like, really, it's been that drastic over the past, I'd say, 3 years, that sometimes it has felt like an identity crisis. But I think that one of the ways that I know that I'm on the right path is I've watched something happen in my life. It feels like I took this trust fall into the unknown where I was like, I'm going to show up a little bit more authentic and see what happens. And I watched some people in my life go, where'd you go? Like, who is this version of you? I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't know who it is, and be very disapproving. And then I've watched some people in my life go, there you are. Oh my gosh. Like, you just bloomed. I'm like, and celebrate it. And the people who have celebrated it are the people that are living a way of life that I respect or am more want to gravitate towards.
They're real authentic.
Yeah. And their opinions that I really trust. And so, like, I would say that's been more of the outside validation that I'm on the right path. But then I think, like, there's this also, like, this inner voice. I think there's been an inner voice inside me for a long time, intuition, God, whatever you want to call it, that's been like, stop playing so small. You can do more. Stop playing so small. You can do more. And stepping into something scary and hard and growing through that, like that feels in alignment for me.
What does that feel like when you're in alignment
It's like a flow state.
in your body?
It's a flow state for sure. I think a lot of
Like inner peace?
yeah. Mhm. Like, oh, I like
The stars aligned.
yeah.
Like I feel like I'm on the right path.
Yeah, and that's not to say I don't doubt it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm because even right now where I'm at is the messy middle. I have not arrived right now.
Yeah.
Like especially like
Neither of us have.
no one has, but like
we're-
right now is like very particularly messy middle where
Yeah.
we're like, you know, we're a year into the podcast, we're shifting what we're doing with like work. We, in a big way, I'm putting myself out there for a lot of career things right now that like will unfold in probably other episodes in the future. And it's all really messy. And I'm,
all while putting yourself out there on the internet.
yeah, all at the same time. But so right now feels particularly messy and I'm having to make decisions and take risks right now. So there's inherently just a lot of questioning of like, is that the right move? Is this the right move? And it's a big season of just failing forward. Like, okay, just to make a decision, follow it through, see what happens, pick up the pieces, keep moving forward. But I think I think in showing up more authentically as who I am and who I feel called to be the past year has given me more confidence in making decisions that do feel more aligned for me moving forward. Because I'm like, oh, I know I have a little bit more sense of direction of where I'm going, so I can keep making decisions towards that direction. I think it was shifting my mindset towards making decisions in alignment with my values and always filtering through that and then
Yeah.
making decisions.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are just afraid, and for me, like I was afraid to step into the things I was being called to the whole time. Like it was probably always a little bit on my life of you're shaped and you have this, we all have gifts and we all have this natural way we see the world. We're shaped by our environment, but we also have these ways we can just do the things we do. Like, I don't know why you can sing any song lyric from like the 90s, even that you like the beat comes on and you can sing the lyrics. Like, you have an insane ability to, like, we all have these weird, quirky things in our personality and we have these gifts and we don't know how to use them. And a lot of times we're really just afraid to use them. We're afraid, and some of them are just for fun to make people laugh. Some of them aren't actually the thing that we really want to do or passionate about, but sometimes we are supposed to use them and use them for good. And how do we use them for good? Well, now in order to use it for good, I have to believe in myself enough. And I also have to drop this other image of myself that I spent 30 years creating. That's the tricky part. Like, I spent a lot of years chasing, I've said it before, but I've tried so many different things in my life to try to gain fulfillment or success or to be liked by other people and form an identity. And most of the time I was forming an identity around stuff I wasn't even that good at. Like I've always formed an identity from a kid. I formed my identity around skateboarding. I was never that great of a skater. I didn't really like getting hurt that much, and it was really painful. And I was okay, but I wasn't like ever gonna make it as a pro skater or anything, you know. And then early on, I kind of learned that, and then I bodyboarded, and I got really good at bodyboarding, and then I surfed, and I got decent at surfing, and I was like forming an identity around surfing, and then I've always snowboarded, and I formed an identity around that. I got really good at working on houses and working with my hands, and I also had this complex around not being manly enough, so it just fit my insecurity really well. It was like, oh well, if I can build things, then I I can prove that I'm a man. And then, you know, I'm not that great though. Like I'm jack of all trades, master of none. I can hang in a conversation with anyone around almost anything in a house, but it doesn't mean I can do it like the tradesman that does it, you know? Then I realized that I'm good at this. Like I'm good at analyzing. I probably should have gotten a psychology degree. I'm insanely passionate about psychology. Who would have known? And I guess just from my past, my upbringing, watching the world the way that I was, and a lot of it probably I would say is philosophy related too. Like philosophy, where philosophy meets psychology is really where I like to live, and that comes from my spiritual background. And the only time that that sparked was when I was on the pursuit of really being a full-time pastor. When I was I was teaching a college group at the time at my church, and the pastor that was running it was my youth pastor. He left for a little bit, and I took over, and I had it for like 2 years, and I loved it, and I got a lot out of that. But I was too young and too scared, so I ran. I stepped out of like that version that was of me, that authentic version that was the most aligned I had ever been in my life until now. Like that's the gap, you know? And so when you're on a call and you feel in alignment, but I hated my ego at the time, hated being viewed as a pastor. I didn't want to be called a pastor. I didn't want to be a pastor. When I'd have conversations with the pastor of the church about like coming on staff full time or anything like that, I was like, I don't like, something in me was battling this, like, you know, I was in this internship program, and I was had another pastor telling me I had the gift of teaching and all, and I was like something was blocking, you know? And and I'm glad it worked out. Like I'm glad I didn't step into that. I was not ready at that time. I had stuff to work through. But then now it's like stepping back into this modality of sharing on the internet is kind of like this a similar feel sometimes, and it just aligns so much better. And helping men, coaching men through the stuff that I've learned in the relationship issues, and it is more fitting for me. But I share all that to say, like, there is this war within, because I had to drop the ego of being known for these other things. Like my ego would have loved nothing more than to surf every day, get really good, or move up to the mountains, snowboard every day, work at a snowboard shop, and or work for a brand like a clothing brand or some snowboard brand. That would have been where my ego would have like thrived, you know? But it was something in me wasn't authentic with that. It was like, that's not the route for you, and it's not and I wasn't even that gifted at that. So it's like, really, I just admired other people who were really gifted at snowboarding, and I thought that was cool. And so I admired people who had different gifts than me, and I wanted to be more like them. And so I chased them until I realized, oh no, actually, the who I need to chase is me. I need to be in pursuit of who I'm supposed to be, and drop the preconceived notions about myself, really drop the contest, drop the comparison. For me, it was probably drop the cool factor. This is not cool.
It's so not cool.
Like, this is just not like, it's just not cool. Like, being a good
No.
dad and being a good partner and trying to build a healthy relationship, I never viewed that as cool. I
Mm-mm.
viewed that as corny. I viewed that as a lot of different things, but I didn't view it as cool. Now I started to realize, like, whoa, this is actually way better.
Well, I think maturity is actually growing to change your view of what is cool.
Ooh,
And I think when you're emotionally immature, chasing like working for that brand or being seen as a surfer dude or a skater dude, like that can be more perceived as cool. But as you mature and you realize like what your values are and what's important, and then you start living in alignment with those, your view of cool changes.
and I still think things are cool. Like, I just bought these hats from this brand that I think is really cool. What I think is cool about the brand now is that they seem like people who care about people. They're not like, that's kind of what I think is cool now. I like brands. I like any company or any group of people that are getting together to make something for the benefit of society, to like give back in some way and to make this place better. I'm about that. I love that. How do you see change now versus when we maybe recorded that podcast early on?
You know what's interesting is I think and I haven't listened to that episode since we put it out, so it's been a minute, but I think back then when I would speak to change, I would be like listing things that happened on the outside more. And I'd be like, well, recently became a stepmom and I moved from my cottage in Ocean Beach to your farm in Vista. And I would like list or like I changed my career. Like that's what I would list as change, which is change for sure. But now when I think about change, it's my daily habits that I focus on instead of like these big milestone kind of changes. Change for me is like becoming aware of my thoughts. And when I think something that is like negative about myself, or like when a limited belief pops up in my mind, I am like very fast to correct it. And so change has been like change now I see as making internal micro shifts than it is making these big plays that are like outside of me. And I think all of these tiny little micro shifts that are happening, which are, I'm calling them micro shifts, but it's really a consistency in practicing the tools that I have daily and making that a habit has changed me internally so much that everything around looks different. So my outside, like when we recorded that episode, we since then we've remodeled the entire yard, half of the inside of the house. We've had massive changes in careers for both of us. We've gotten married. We've my relationship with the girls has deepened so much and so much trust has been built there. So like there's all these external changes, but they're truly because of the internal ones that the minor wrenching on myself every single day has made everything outside look different.
I love that, because it's like, that's the true that's the growth right there, even in a year span of listing your view on change, like realizing that it's all internal.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I would say is I've always had a fear of it. And that's something I'm always working on is like embracing the unknown and being like embracing that the only consistent thing in life is change and learning to flow with that. Like that's something I'm always working on, but I think I'm seeing the results of that work more now in accepting the reality of change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's hard.
Change
I
is hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the hardest part for me is what has been in my life, like letting go of the parts that I thought were me, like the attachments in identity. So in order to be a different version of myself, we call it double-mindedness a lot. Double-mindedness is, I want this life, but I also want this life, and I want to piece them together to create this perfect blend. And you can do that, but sometimes it's not, they don't fit together. So if I want to have a good relationship and a positive, healthy relationship with you, I have to let go of some of these core beliefs or narratives that negatively impact our relationship. And so it's a lot of letting go and trusting this other thing. And I've held on to these narratives. These are comfortable for me. I like them. I had a lot of views on sex before that weren't healthy. And so I had to work through that in order for us to be able to build a healthier relationship. And I think there's just so many things like that. And from big ones like that to small ones like I have to have an icon pass. I'm struggling right now that I don't have an icon pass this year, and I don't think we can afford it this year because I want this life. I want this life. I want to pursue this thing that we're doing, but I'm having to let go of this identity and this, like, what about, how am I going to be when we literally see Big Bear from our house and there's powder and I'm not going to be able to go and I'm going to be like sweating it.
Also, for people listening that are not from
San Diego.
California, that's like the snowboarding pass to be able to go to the different mountains and snowboard is an
Yeah.
icon
Yeah.
pass.
Sorry. Yeah. Like I always wanted to be able to have this other identity also. And it's great. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes in order to get the life you want, you have to let go of these other things. And if you want to get serious and you really want to build the life that you want with what you want to do for work, with what you want to do with your time, with a partner you want to have and the type of relationship you want to have, you have to drop other aspects of your identity. And what you learn is that those sometimes weren't even really where your authentic self is anyway. And it's a hard reality, especially when you've lived there for a long time and you've really hung on to those things tightly as part of who you are. Like, I am this. And I have a lot more flexible identity now. So my identity, I try to place my identity now in not even this podcast or our relationship, but a lot of the things that I used to place my identity in don't make me me. You don't make me me. The girls don't even make me me. What makes me me is my character and the character that I've built, the resilience I've built, and the love. And love myself well. Yes, do the things I like to do. I'm not going to just give up on everything I like to do to better love everyone around me. I have to keep up my own excitement and joy in this world, but it's just tricky to play with your identity in that way and to change. I think when people say people don't change, I think they're right, because it's really hard to change. And a lot of us struggle to change. So most people don't change. It's easier not to. It's just easier not to. If you grew up watching a certain sports team and you do these activities and you're good at them, it's so easy to just stay there. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have an inner calling and you really, and that never really was your true authentic self, and you didn't really enjoy those activities, you've just gone along with it because your social circles and the people around you, your friends, your family, have told you that that's the way you are, you might need to change to really find your authentic self. And those are the people that my heart breaks for.
What that looks like, it's those little whispers in your mind keeping you stuck. That's how you, that's like, if you want to identify it in your body or like actually tangibly know what we're talking about, it's those little thoughts that when whispers in your mind that say like it's not cool to go chase this thing, or
How will they view
doing
me?
that is going to be like committing social suicide, or you'll never make enough money if you go for that dream, or you're not capable of getting that job, or you're not smart enough to pursue this, or um, your family will think you're crazy if you do that, or your reputation is going to be in the gutter if people find out you do this. Like it's all those are the blocks. They manifest as whispers telling you play small, don't expand, stay safe. But they're at the root and the core of all of them, just lies. It's lies we tell ourselves. It's lies that we pick up from outside society.
Yeah, and it's like we we can get stuck there. Not this doesn't happen to everyone. This happens to some people where from the get-go, we spend all day from the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed putting energy into things that are solidifying this identity and keeping up this identity that we create. And the question is it the identity that you want? Is it the life that you want? Or is it this identity that other people told you? It's whatever you want. And I think a lot of us just don't from the get-go go like, what do I want to be? Some of us weren't necessarily given the permission. We were impressionable and insecure and maybe just fell into a perception of others and kept up with that. And we kept just keeping up with this perception and this perception and this perception, when really it's just whatever you want to be. And you can change it if you're daring to. If you want to go through what we've gone through. All right. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.